Welcome to Wayward Writers. I'm Senior Literary Agent and author Heather Cashman.
I'm author and writing coach Stephanie Bearce.
And I'm author and writing coach Nicki Jacobsmeyer.
Our mission is to nurture and enrich established writers throughout their publishing journeys.
We welcome all genres, age groups, and publishing paths through video podcasts, online webinars, in-person retreats, and more.
We're here to help you conquer your path.
We are happy today to have with us Nicki Jacobsmeyer as our guest instead of our co-host. And we are going to be talking about nonfiction proposals, specifically adult nonfiction proposals, and some of the ins and outs of selling a book when you haven't written it yet. So we are excited to have Nicki talking to us about this because she has sold a couple. We're going to tell you a little more about Nicki, some things you may not know yet. Nicki Jacobsmeyer started entertaining her imagination by writing stories down in elementary school. As she got older, she enjoyed inspiring and encouraging others through her writing. Over a decade ago, she realized writing was her true passion, and she hasn't stopped since.
Nicki is obsessed with reading and research. Since she panics if she is without a book, you can find a trail of them throughout her house and truck. Although her laptop is not far away, she always writes her first draft with a number 2 pencil and paper. Nicki collects pencils when she travels or persuades family or friends to bring them back as a souvenir. Each pencil has a story and inspires her as she writes.
She also writes fiction and nonfiction for children and adults and has a forthcoming middle grade nonfiction book, Spooky America, The Ghostly Tales of St. Charles from Arcadia, an adult nonfiction book, Images of America, Kentucky's Pack Horse Librarians, a middle grade book, Surviving the Iditarod, a You Choose Surviving Extreme Sports, and a historical nonfiction book, Images of America, Chesterfield.
Nicki is a PB Party annual contest honorable mention winner among 1,100 entries, April 2024. She's the third place winner of the Institute of Children's Literature Narrative Nonfiction Picture Book Contest and an honor recipient of the 2021 SCBWI Works of Outstanding Promise Grant.
Besides reading and writing, she loves to travel, knit, the outdoors, sunsets, family barbecues, and watching a storm come in from her front porch. And I've been on her front porch, and it is very beautiful.
Thanks, Heather. Well, thank you, guys.
Yeah, we're excited to talk about this, especially because right now I am also writing a nonfiction proposal, and I feel like I'm going to go crazy.
You know what? Then you are doing exactly the right thing. It's crazy and fun all at the same time, but wouldn't you agree, Stephanie?
Honestly, I'm really struggling. It's hard.
You're going to feel so much more sympathy for all of your authors now, Heather.
Yes.
I know. I do feel sympathy.
You know, the first one I ever wrote, I thought, was going to be super easy because it's a proposal. It's not a full manuscript, so what's the big deal?
Right. Honestly, I'm finding it harder because you have to have the entire outline done. And you have to know this is what my theme is, and this is what, and usually I'm a discovery writer. Like I write fiction and I discovery write. And then at the very end, when I get to the end and I look back at my manuscript, I'm like, oh, this is the theme that popped out of this book.
Yeah. This will be the opposite of that.
We get it. We totally get it.
That's it.
And fiction is difficult in its own ways too.
So where did you get the idea for your nonfiction book, Kentucky's Pack Horse Librarians, that has already come out on March?
Yeah,
what's
18th,
the date?
March 18th it came out.
Amazing, 2025.
Yes. So let's see, in 2017, what was that? I guess it's been 8 years ago now. One of my dear friends and critique partners, Chris Schmidt, sent Stephanie and I, actually, since we are the nonfiction gurus in our critique group, sent us this Atlas Obscuria article about the Kentucky Pack Horse Librarians during the Great Depression. And I instantly fell in love and responded, and I was like, "Ooh, Stephanie, are you good if I run with this one?" And she's like, "It's all yours, go." And so that's where it started 8 years ago. And 8 years later, there's finally a book. So.
Can you tell us about some of those challenges that you have faced along the way? Because 8 years sounds like a long time for a
Yeah.
book. However, many of us who have that 8 years is just a moment in time in the publishing industry. But can you tell us about
Right.
some of the challenges you faced researching and the history of this book?
Yes, big challenges was in this 8 years, I've written probably 4 different books about these women. A lot of times, right, you find a topic and it's a matter of what format and what age group. So there is a fiction picture book, a nonfiction picture book, a middle grade novel, all the formats. But this one finally landed and it was worth it. There was a lot of close acquisition situations and whatnot, but this finally landed with Arcadia Publishing as an adult nonfiction. Am I thrilled about it? As far as the challenges researching
Yes.
them throughout this whole time, right? The first one is I live in rural, flat Missouri, and it is not Kentucky. And although there's similarities in rural life, no two places are the same. And it was really important to me that I made sure, just as any nonfiction author should, and fiction, to capture that authenticity and make sure I was doing the place and the community justice and accurate. And so I had to figure out, okay, I need to get to Kentucky physically. I needed to walk in the mountains. I needed to feel what it was like to be there. And so that just included saving for money, ways to help with that, and things like that, which we go into a deep dive if you want to know more in our research hacks class. And then the second challenge was for me in this format particular was getting the photographs of the original Pack Horse Librarian scrapbooks that are stored and preserved at the FDR Presidential Library Museum in Hyde Park, New York. And that was probably my biggest obstacle because the archivists and librarians were like, "You are welcome to come up here and you can see the scrapbook and you can hold it with our amazing white gloves to preserve everything, but you can't scan it because it is too delicate." And obviously that's understandable, right? I mean, we're talking almost 100 years old. And so with my book, Kentucky's Pack Horse Librarians, it's part of a series with Arcadia called Images of America. So it has over 100 vintage images. So pictures are as important as the words in this book. So that was a huge obstacle. In all honesty, I cried at first because these pictures just completely captured these women and captured this project. And so I was like, okay, you have to pivot, right? Sometimes it doesn't work out the way you hope it does. And so I kept digging because I was like, I'm at a dead end. I have to get these pictures. They have to be a certain resolution and parameters for my publisher. And so the most amazing thing happened. I was doing research. I came across this professor and professional photographer, Jason Vance. And in this article, he had pictures of the original scrapbooks. And so I reached out to him, and he was so lovely and kind and was like, "You are welcome to use these pictures for free." And so I waited patiently to hear back from my editor to see if they were the proper resolution, because that was the only way they would get in the book. And they were. And I get goosebumps every time I see them still. And they're in the book. And these pictures, there are no words that can capture what these women and these patrons in this community did during these times. So I'm very grateful to Jason. And yeah, it was the research, the keep going, I think. What I've learned from many writers is what came in handy there.
That's so inspiring that you just kept going, and then amazing things happen when you keep at it.
Yes, and I try my best not to sound desperate. I hope the word I was going for was passionate when I was talking, but just conveying how important it was to the project to get these and to make sure that other people would get an essence of what happened during that time.
And getting photos is no easy feat. A lot of times, my nonfiction authors really struggle to get photos that they can afford too,
Yes.
because you, as an author, almost always have to pay for the photos yourself that go in
Hmm.
the book. So that's one thing with nonfiction that I think a lot of people who are just starting out might not know, that the publisher doesn't pay for the rights to use the photo in a published book.
Hmm.
So that really feels like a miracle that you found
Yes.
someone who had them at the right resolution. That's
Yes,
really,
it felt like it was absolutely meant to be that
yeah.
they were in the book, and I am eternally grateful to him and all of my sources, all of the people, all of the like real experts in all these individual topics. They were wonderful to work with.
So you're talking now about all the sources for your book. How did you ensure that you had historical accuracy in your book and that you went to the right sources and things like that?
I mean, it comes back to the research. And when I talked to people, it was from different, like the federal level, the FDR library. That's in New York. That's not right. It's not even in Kentucky, but they have everything about Roosevelt's. He was a president, and libraries, museums in Kentucky State in like over 6 counties. And I was very about who I was and what
Hmm.
my goal was and my passion and mission to make sure it was accurate. So everyone was so kind. The people of Kentucky are so kind and open arms and make you feel welcome and everything like that. And even after, so I would fact check with them. And then after even I wrote the book, they were willing, I would send them the pages that included their information and made sure that they were accurate, and they would sign off for them or say, hey, these changes need to be made. I would say it this way. And I was so grateful for that because that's their time and they're not getting paid for it. A lot of people said if you could just credit us and if we can get a free copy of the book when it's published for our collection. And usually in contracts you have author copies are part of that, and that's what I use my author copies for, is to thank the people that made this book possible, because I couldn't have done it on my own and it wouldn't have been accurate. It wouldn't have been as accurate as it needs to be, and it is now. And I've been on a horse as a child, one that's like trained to go around in a circle. But I didn't know anything else about horses. And so I researched different trainers, and I got together with the horse trainer Christine at Ride Equestrian in my community. And I did chores and worked and learned all these things about horses and took lessons because I wanted to know what, like, not only were these women delivering books, but they were on horses in all terrain and all weather. And what must that be like? And I will say, to actually ride a horse that is not drugged is challenging as an adult. And it was super fun. And I've been volunteering for 3 years now. And like I said, like you guys said in my book, I love to research. And so it's important to me for me to immerse myself, and even with my fiction, immerse in what it is I'm writing about. And then you get to do all the jobs too, right? I think that's one thing about being a writer. I don't know if you guys agree. Like, depending on what you're writing on, you could be a doctor or a librarian or a lawyer. That's fun. You don't really have to decide on a job. So,
Or a Pack Horse Librarian, right?
there you go.
That's inspiring. It sounds like you enjoyed your research and it was quite thorough. You did get to go uh, to several locations, you said. Did you interview any
Mhm.
descendants of the Pack Horse Librarians for your research?
Grace Caudill Lucas. He was a pack horse librarian in Lee County, Kentucky at 22 years old. And I spoke with their son and grandson, and it was just amazing just to hear about their life growing up with their mother as a pack horse librarian and her leaving as the sun rose and not coming home till the sun went down and just what she did for that community. And so that was really, really neat to just inform
That's so
of what
cool.
that might have been like.
That sounds like that might be a side article somewhere sometime.
Right? Yeah,
Don't
for
waste that
sure.
research.
So, and that's the thing. Exactly, right? Reuse your research. And also pick a topic you love. Like, I would never have kept researching and writing different forms for 8 years if I didn't love it, right? And it's not even over, right? Once you sell the book, you're going to then spend all this time sharing it and trying to share it with other people and doing events. And so don't write for anyone else. If you're writing to the market and don't like the topic, it's not going to go well. You're going to be miserable at some point.
Well, it doesn't sound like you were miserable. It sounds like you had a lot of fun doing this.
Yeah, so much fun. Still am.
So, are there any like surprising or little known facts about the librarians that you uncovered?
Their persistence to the weather, they average over 100 miles a week on their routes. Just little cool things like they encourage patrons not to fold over, dog ear their corners. So they would repurpose old Christmas cards, which I'm excited to do at events. For the past 8 years, I've been saving Christmas cards because I was determined to get this published at some point. And I thought that was cool. All year, these readers and families have these Christmas cards in these bookmarks in their books. And I also learned, which makes complete sense, but because they were in the Appalachian Mountains and it's so rural, not only did they deliver books and read alouds and teach people how to read, but they also were a mailman or a messenger. Like they would send for the midwife or a doctor or pass on news that this woman had a baby and there's a new member in the community, and just how tight knit it was. It was really fun just to discover those tidbits of info.
That's awesome.
I can't wait to get my copy and read it and see all the really cool pictures. So, how about if we dive into talking about how you got this contract by writing a nonfiction book proposal, and exactly what is it? How do you do it? How do you sell a book without having written it?
You've written it in your head, I think. But as far as the proposal, there's the parts to a proposal are an overview, which is a description, how many words, genre, things like that, your bio. And when I first started writing my first book, I didn't have any books, I didn't have any awards, but that doesn't matter. People can tell if you're part of writing organizations or taken certain classes that help inform the book. Those are all things that matter. And then marketing. What are your target markets? How are you going to reach them? Why are you the best person to write this book? And I think if you do something that informs the book, that should go in your bio. If I have been riding horses or I was a librarian for 5 years, that would have gone in my bio. Promotion, how are you going to promote it? Do you have a website, social media? Who do you know? If you don't know people, where are you going to go to introduce yourself? Then the competition, that's 3 to 4 other books that have been published in the past 5 years that are like yours in one way. So you're showing the editor and publisher why it will sell, but is different, which you're showing the editor how your book is going to fill a hole in the market. And then a chapter outline in sample chapters, which is usually an intro to 2 to 3 chapters. If you want to know more about this, because this could be a whole thing, and Stephanie and I did a class on nonfiction proposals, so that kind of does a deep dive on how to conquer this bad boy proposal. And I will say this, many people do this also. Write a proposal, even if it's for yourself, if it's not for your agent or publisher, for your fiction work. Because there are some things that you will know if there's a hole before you write it. Like think about, okay, what is out there? I've done that with ideas. Like, oh, I think this is a unique idea. And then after I do some research, I'm like, nope, there's 5 books out already and mine isn't different. And that saves you so much time. Yes, it can be frustrating, but better than spend years on a project and it's just not the timing for it.
Or you can take the topic and you can find a way to put a unique or fresh spin on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it will sell in the market because you've done something different and interesting.
Yes.
I agree. I think
Yeah.
researching your market really is important no matter what you're writing. Knowing what
Yeah.
else is out there and where yours fits.
Yeah. I have gotten books before that, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but they were so similar to something that was already on the market. And I was like, this could have just been copied. Not the voice or whatever,
Sure.
but the plot, the characters, the like certain aspects of things, the world. It's also similar. There's no way I could ever sell it because there's no fresh spin.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really important to know your market, know what's out there for every book. Also, one thing that's in a proposal, a nonfiction proposal, especially adult, is a table of contents of the proposal itself. That's
Yes.
usually in the beginning as well.
Yes, with the title
Yeah.
page, for sure. My nonfiction proposal for this book in particular was like 35 pages, 40 pages. They're
Yeah.
long, right?
Yeah.
It's not like a
Pretty
2-page thing. And some publishers have a form that they want you to fill out, and they got nitty
Mm-hmm.
gritty. We want addresses, phone numbers, emails. It's time consuming. But again, if you want it, you go for it and enjoy it
Yeah.
along the way and learn a lot. I always
Don't
learn, keep
don't you
learning,
feel
right?
though that having that outline makes it smoother and faster to write the book? Having all of that done up front?
Absolutely. And sometimes it changes, right? And that's fine. You communicate with your editor, and sometimes you find something. I found things that were true in one source or several sources. And then when I talk to an expert, they're like, no, that's inaccurate. It goes both ways. And then some things you find this whole new idea that you never knew, and it informs your writing and it changes things a little. And I think that's the fun part, right? Is discovering new things that the world and at least you might not know. So
All of us should be able to answer this, but which sections of a nonfiction proposal do you think publishers scrutinize the most?
the writing has to be there with anything. I feel like that's a given. But I think the big thing is what's already out there, and where is this gonna be sold for? And it's got to be accurate. The backing has to be there. And why are you the best person? With Pack Horse Librarians, this book, there was no adult nonfiction book in print. So that definitely was a plus for me. But my first book, there was 5 other adult nonfiction books. So it doesn't mean that you can still have books on the market. It's just a matter of showing why yours is different. Because at the end of the day, it's still a business, right?
Like we said, knowing your why on that book, why you want to do it and why it's going to work in the market, that's going to sell the book no matter whether it's a nonfiction or a fiction, but
Right.
that's really going to help.
Yeah, and like for this topic, adult novels have done really well. Kentucky Pack Horse Librarians novels have done well in the market. And just in this process of doing events and things like that, people are comping, if you enjoyed this novel, come check this out, right? And that's like how you pitch it to an agent or an editor. So it's interesting how that pitching never stops.
Yeah. And it is so true though, because I love going back and reading nonfiction about a book that I loved or a place that
Yes.
I'm in. That's so fun to find out
Yes.
the real story behind it. So congratulations.
Yeah, and thank you. Even things like the Great Depression, just I learned things and saw things having not lived in that time that are just mind boggling. And I will say, I think we're in a situation as far as being secluded and that we've all experienced on different levels with COVID that gives the whole adage of being stuck in your home and not being able to get out to see people. Like everyone can experience that different. I don't know about you all, but when my library gave the heads up that it was going to close down in hours, I was like, oh, panic. I just filled up my truck. I don't know if I'm going to read this, but I don't know how long we're going to be closed down. And it made me think because I had already started researching these women. I was like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So it's put a new perspective on the whole topic too, because I think we all can relate in different ways, but in certain ways of what it's like to not get to see people and not get to go to places and not have the resources that we might have had at one point.
And that's a great thing to actually mention in your proposal too. I mean,
Yeah.
how is this going to relate to the general audience because of what we've gone through or because of social situations or
Absolutely.
current
Yeah.
current events,
Yeah,
things like
I
that.
think that's great.
So, what are some common mistakes that you think writers make in their proposals that actually hurt their chances of selling the book? And did you make any of those, or did you
So,
make any mistakes at all?
oh,
Ever?
I always make tons of mistakes. I mean,
Just kidding.
I probably made mistakes that I don't even know about yet. I think one of the most common mistakes is thinking that you don't need to do extensive research until you get the book contract. And that is absolutely false.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talked earlier, it's going to be easier to write this proposal, but you need to know the book like you've written the full manuscript. And the editor is going to know if you don't. Like, there's going to be holes. If you're like, oh, I'm going to go write nonfiction and write a nonfiction proposal because it will be easier to write the proposal than the full manuscript, I would highly recommend you pause and rethink that.
Contemplation.
I have never
Contemplate on this.
thank you. I have never thought it is easier. I think writing a full novel and book fiction is difficult too, in its different ways, but it's not a shortcut. Stephanie, you would agree? Yes?
Absolutely. It is not a shortcut. It's a building block.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are some of those things when you're doing it? How detailed does it have to be? Give us some nitty gritty on this. How many sample chapters do you need to do?
Yeah. This is another research thing. If your book's in a series, you need to research what the series looks like. Some series chapters are a certain number of pages, they have a certain tone. You want to reflect that in your proposal. That is part of the research. If it's not a series, then it's an age group or genre, and that also has certain things. You don't want to write a 12-page chapter as one of your sample chapters for a early middle grade novel. You're going to show the editor that you're not familiar with that age group or that format. A chapter outline, again, it depends. Like for this book, I knew there was a range of chapters. I knew what I wanted to cover. So I did the chapter outline. It had the title. For me, I wanted this book to have, I didn't want it to be like just informational nonfiction. So I tried to make the chapter titles a little bit more lyrical. So you do the title and then you do a brief description, like 2 to 3 sentences of what that chapter is going to do. And then this sample chapter should be appropriate lengths for what you're writing for. And it should be in the same voice and the same tone as how you will write it. Again, not shortcuts. And get your proposal critiqued by your critique partners, especially the outline and the sample chapters. And I've learned to suck in my pride and ask for help, even on things that maybe I think I should know by now after writing. I'm like, no, can you help me? You know what I mean? The person that's an expert in this, can you please help? That's what a community is for, like Wayward Writers. That's what writing organizations are for, because you just build each other up.
Well, going back to the question about mistakes, like doing research, doing the outline, that's one thing I see a lot when I'm looking at nonfiction proposals as an agent, is that I can tell by the detail of the outline if they have done enough research to actually fill in those chapters.
Right.
Like I can tell if the chapter from the beginning to the end has an arc. I can tell if the chapter is going to give me certain information or reveal new things about this subject. So I think that's one thing. And I think too, like you said, writing in a series, meaning the publisher already has a series for this book and you want your book to be part of that series. You have to have read other books in that series and know. And as an agent, if I get a proposal, which I have definitely before gotten a proposal for the 4 Kids series at Chicago Review Press, or for like these books at Arcadia. They have very specific series and very specific outlines and things that they're requiring. So then as an agent, I'm going to go look at that series and I'm going to say, oh, this is what's in there. And then if your proposal doesn't match it,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm going to know that you're not really prepared as an author. And the other thing that I see a lot as an agent in nonfiction that really makes me struggle is people who have no real connection or real platform for this proposal or this idea. If you do that, you have to realize you're going to have to go and do your research. You're going to have to put in the time to become an expert on this subject. And do you have advice for people who feel like their platform isn't big enough?
I always feel like my platform's not big enough. You
We
do the
all
best you
feel that way,
can,
Nikki. It's
and
okay.
you put in the work. But I guess it really comes down to reaching out and finding different places and connections that you have that are related to the subject in order for me to think I even have a shot at getting a book sale. But also for my mental well-being, I need to know I can write this thing, right? It doesn't matter if I can trick, quote unquote, the agent or editor. If I get a signed contract and I can't deliver because I didn't prepare, that's on me. And that does not sound like fun to me. I recommend making these connections and building the platform, if you don't have it for a specific topic, before you write the proposal and are able to tell that, because they want to know. Like, one of the questions for this publisher is, who do you know? Who have you worked with? Who are your main sources? And will they buy your book and support it? That is blatant, right? And I'm
Yeah.
not going to say yes if I don't know that. I can't write that way. And so I would recommend, I didn't live in Kentucky. There's certain things that I am not, that I knew I had to learn about before I even thought about writing about it, and then continue to do that as I'm researching it, as I'm marketing. Even now, as I'm marketing the book, I'm making connections with people that I didn't even know were there before, because it's an ongoing thing. And I also I love the topic. So,
And I think that's
yeah.
one thing I know because I've talked to you during the process of this, and you made connections all along the way. And so those connections are part of your platform in selling this. And could you tell us a little bit about that?
When you write nonfiction, especially, you have to be organized. And I learned how detailed I need to be along the way. I won't remember. And then it's like double research and then I'm frustrated because I'm like, Nikki, you've already done this. With each format I wrote and attempted to sell or things like that, what did we talk about? When did we talk about it? Keeping emails. I reached out to people. Hi, I don't know if you remember me from 5 years ago when I took your class. And in one way, it's, oh, wow, 5 years. But another way, okay, it's 5 years. It's okay, and this person has been huge. And now, they're going to host an event for me. And it's up in New York and it'll probably be virtual. But those are things that I could have had the connection but not had documented it anywhere. And then I'm like, where is it? It's somewhere here. But I think it's really important to keep a record. For me, it's Excel spreadsheets. Do whatever works for you. I want to be able to search it and document conversations, classes, events. When you call them to try to make a connection before you do the proposal, ask them, would you be willing to work with me on an event if this book sells? It might not, but if it does, then you've already have this relationship. So you have to be vulnerable. And we're writers, right? We have to be vulnerable anyways whenever we write. You just need to also do it on the marketing side and the connection side. And people are genuinely kind and want to help. And experts are excited that you're excited about this thing that they're an expert on.
Yeah. So you mentioned before that there was not another adult nonfiction book about Kentucky Pack Horse Librarians. Is there anything else that you think made it stand out that helped it get a deal?
I tried to make my proposal as detailed as possible with the connections and research I had made, and being transparent yet professional about my passion for the subject and how long I've been working on it. And like I said earlier, I knew the topic has done well and has been talked about in novels and just in general. So I used that. That would be my guess. And I will say this, networking is very powerful. And I think that when you know someone that knows someone that writes for something, there's a way to do all of this professionally, right? You just don't go start emailing editors, hey, but someone passing on a word of mouth is very important. Hey, editor, I know someone. Networking is important. Even if you don't like to do it, I recommend trying to force yourself and then making a huge celebration after you do it, because it's a big deal. I think there's several factors on how we can get book deals in publishing, and I'm very grateful.
That's awesome.
So, Nicki, now that you've got it done,
Yes.
how different was, and congratulations, and it's published, how different
Thank
was your
you.
final version from your original proposed version? What changes did you have to make?
Honestly, it was very similar outline-wise to
Yay,
topics I
for
wanted
you.
to write about. In fairness, though, I had been writing and dreaming of this book for 7 years. So I feel like if someone asked me in a McDonald's, I could tell them exactly what I wanted to write about. So there's that. But so yes, that was really nice. But there was things after I went to Kentucky and met people and things, there was things that I wanted to more heavily focus on than touched on lightly in my outline. And so I'm very grateful that I got to go down there, because they breathe life into all the research and making it real. So I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you for sharing all of this knowledge
Yes.
with us, and
Thank
it's been
you.
great to chat about it.
Fun.
Do you have any advice for me and any other first-time fiction authors who want to sell a book on proposal?
Yes. I mean, I think nonfiction is just delightful, and there's so much discovery. And so I also think it's brave, because you're working with facts, and sometimes they're not your facts or your life. And so there's a responsibility with that to get it accurate. But I would take one thing at a time. Just like when you get an editorial letter back and you look at all of it and you're like, it seems very overwhelming. I just recommend taking it piece by piece, and try not to look at it as the whole picture right off the bat, and find a community like Wayward Writers, and take classes and learn how to write a proposal. Don't reinvent the wheel and make it harder for yourself than it already is. Writing is hard. It's so fun, but it's challenging. So do that and have fun. And don't forget to celebrate every step that you conquer along the way. And that doesn't just mean selling the book, because writing a proposal and researching, that is a win no matter what happens. Yes, it's icing on a cake if a sale comes, for sure. But you've learned a huge skill that you can apply to your other work, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nicki, for sharing your journey on this and your path to publishing. I'm so excited to get my copy and read it. And also,
thank
we've got a
you.
class that if anybody's interested in non-proposal writing, check out the Wayward Writers nonfiction proposal class, and you can learn from Nicki and all of her experience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Wayward Writers.
Let's connect. Find us at waywardwriters.com, X, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
See you next time. Conquer your path.